Okay. So, last night, I finally watched Godzilla vs. Destroyah. And the plan was to do a double feature of the next two chronological Godzilla movies, Destroyah and Godzilla 98. We weren't able to finish Godzilla 98. We got about halfway through, but we were interrupted partway into the movie. Clay had to take a pretty long phone call. Everything was Gucci. But by the time we got back into the movie, we were only able to watch a certain amount before I'm like, I'm sorry, I kind of got to tap out. I'm really tired. So I'm hopeful we can finish the movie later today. Excuse me. If not, hopefully Sunday afternoon. But as I have been going through the Heisei films, something I have said repeatedly is just how excited I was for Destroyah. I have heard for a very long time, even before I was like really getting into Godzilla movies, that this is apparently one of the best ones. This is an all-time favorite monster. It's an all-time favorite movie. This might not end up being your favorite Godzilla movie, but it's going to be in your top 10. It'll probably end up in your top 5. And there were some things I knew about the movie going in that it turns out I was kind of misinformed on, or at the very least I misunderstood. Number 1 is Burning Godzilla. My understanding was Burning Godzilla was just kind of like a super mode that Godzilla would go into, like from getting too hot or absorbing too much radiation. And that because Destroyah had been hyped up so much, like this is one of the best kaiju, it's one of the best fights, he was going to push Godzilla to the brink, be the one to kill him, because this movie is famous for having that death of Godzilla. And Godzilla would have to undergo some transformation, some like magical girl transformation into Burning Godzilla. And that's what would have given him the power to overcome Destroyah. And either he would then succumb to that excess of radiation, which even for Goji would be too much, or it would be truly a mutual kill that Godzilla would not have been able to do otherwise. I was also under the impression, because I had heard that Destroyah was like a coalescence of these like crustaceans. So I thought it was more like, here's like a bunch of crabs or like these microorganisms that all kind of come together and then fuse to make like this giant, like a bunch of like crab amoebas make this giant Nidoking gargoyle. Because every time I look at Destroyah's final form, I think the silhouette kind of looks like Nidoking. And I won't lie, I think that's awesome. And that's not quite the case, because they start off as these like little like single cell organisms, but then you get like maybe 15 xenomorph sized things, which then fuse into one like giant crab thing, which then becomes the Nidoking Chernobog fusion. So I had a misunderstanding of how Burning Godzilla worked, had a misunderstanding of what Destroyah actually was, because I also didn't know it was like what Godzilla is to the atomic bomb, Destroyah is to the oxygen destroyer, which I do think is a really cool idea. So I went into this movie with incredibly high expectations, and I also went into this movie with some misinformation or misinterpretation of what exactly it was going to entail. Yeah, it's still a top 5 Godzilla movie. This movie's fucking amazing. I can't lie, man. I feel like almost every few minutes, either Clay or I would just like kind of say out loud to each other, "This is so cool." Like, this movie's so good. Oh boy, like I wanted to get that, kind of intro out of the way. It's like, because there are some things I misunderstood about the movie, and it's not a boy, I misunderstood this. This movie actually sucks. Like, I think it's better. Because imagine my surprise when I'm thinking Burning Godzilla is the super mode at the end of the film, and that's literally how the movie starts, is Burning Godzilla destroying Hong Kong. That was cool. One thing I've really liked about the Heisei era that I've talked about is that Godzilla, with the exception of Space Godzilla, which is why it's my least favorite Heisei film, is that Godzilla is never a protagonist. He is always either the main threat or he is like, here's the other threat, and then like Godzilla's 1B. Even in Biollante, it's like, no, Godzilla is the main threat in that one. Like Mothra, he's definitely the main threat. Like Batra's a bit of a threat, I suppose, but like Godzilla's the main antagonist in that. He's basically the main antagonist in every movie, I think, except Ghidorah, and like I said, Space Godzilla, where he's actively not an antagonist. But what I find interesting in this movie, it's less Godzilla is a main threat because he's this territorial, aggressive menace that we've seen throughout the Heisei films, and more, this isn't his fault. Because something is going wrong in his heart, like because his heart is a nuclear reactor, it is starting to overheat and break down. And as they describe, if it gets to a point where Godzilla does overheat and like he's gone, the radiation that like they do say Godzilla will explode. And they say if he explodes, like the energy released and the radiation released is akin to every nuclear bomb on the Earth going off at once. And it will melt the atmosphere. And you get a scene of what that would look like as just this, and it like creates this mushroom cloud of flame. And then you see like the look from space and how that looks. Sorry, I had to pause real quick. You get this flaming mushroom cloud, which is probably one of my favorite scenes in any Godzilla movie. Like, it just looked really cool. There's this one shot of like a helicopter going off into a sunrise. It might have been a sunset, but that was also really pretty. There's this one representation of Godzilla melting, like falling into the ocean, essentially melting the Earth the other way. That was also really cool. I've said before, and I was actually saying to Clay, like, earlier as we were talking, Shin Godzilla is my favorite depiction of Godzilla. Because I really like seeing, here is this poor animal that is affected, but like, it is a victim of the radiation. And you see it in pain, and you see it trying to adapt and survive despite everything. And that scene where it uses its atomic breath is my favorite atomic breath scene in the series. Now, I still have like 16 movies to watch. That could change. But that is my favorite atomic breath. It is less of like, here's this really cool release of power, and it's just trying to get that energy and that pain out of its system. And Burning Godzilla isn't to the same degree as Shin, but it's almost like the proto-idea for what Shin Godzilla would later do. And I really liked and appreciated that. So as for Destroyah, again, the idea that, like, okay, this is the oxygen destroyer monster. So that's a really cool callback. Also, that's really, really bad. The fact that it has an oxygen destroyer breath weapon is so cool. It's so bad. Oh, I love this thing and I hate this thing. I described earlier, I think I had mentioned that it kind of reminded me of a xenomorph in its, I don't know if I would say main form. So like there's the protozoa form, and then it's like, here's the big like crab xenomorph. Before we saw it, and we got, the military going into that like facility. Oh gosh, the freaking scene in the aquarium where you just see like the fish dissolving. That was so fucking cool. Oh my gosh, this movie's amazing. But like the scene where like the military are all going in and you're getting like these different shots of them moving. Like, this feels like something out of Alien. And then you just see like one of the Destroyahs just in the frame, and you didn't notice that originally. I'm like, this really is straight out of Alien. The design is really cool. It even has the like xenomorph tongue thing. Like, what the hell? It is a xenomorph if it combined with like some of the beta from Muv-Luv. That is a horrifying combination. Like that scene where it's attacking the cab. I think it was a cab, but it's like it's attacking a car and the woman is inside. That is genuinely horrifying. Like, it's all so cool. And then they combine and just make like a big crab dude. You're like, okay, so I mean, just one of them is bad. Now we've got a giant one. It's not good. And then yeah, the scene where you get the full Nidoking Chernobog is like there's the lightning and shit. It's like it just looks like the devil. Like it's so cool. And there's a point where like his horn just starts glowing and he's using it like a sword to fight Godzilla. There's a bit where he kills Godzilla Jr. And as someone who likes Godzilla Jr., I appreciated that. It really showed that, yeah, this is a monster that is not playing around. And it's like, I think back to Manila. And the reason I really don't like Manila, aside from, like, he looks like he was born as an 80-year-old man. And I do intentionally make the years older every time I use that joke. But there's something about making, here's the kid character that children can watch and really relate to with a Godzilla movie. Like, knowing what Godzilla represents always feels a little weird to me. And Baby is similar in that way, but I don't know. I just like the thing way more than Manila, so I kind of give it a pass. But the fact that even the kid wasn't safe, like, he puts up a fight. Like, there is a bit where, like, he gets a really good blast in on Destroyah, and I appreciated that. But the poor kid was definitely out of his depth. And there is a scene where, you know, after Godzilla is like fights Destroyah, which is really cool. Like, you know, fights the thing, and then Destroyah splits up, so Godzilla's getting ganked by all of these, you know, Xenomorph beta. That's really cool. Like, I like how vicious this monster is. I like its design. I like how crafty it can be too. And, you know, Godzilla takes care of it, and then goes to mourn his child. And as he's mourning, Destroyah just like gets him, and then like his tail like wraps around Godzilla's throat, and then like he drags him, and then he throws him. And as Clay pointed out, it's like, you know, with how many times Godzilla has thrown an enemy by the tail, the fact that he has now been thrown by the tail of an enemy, it's kind of fitting. Like, you know, it really is. I've talked about another thing I really like about Heisei Godzilla are all these moments where it's having genuine emotion. And we get that in this, you know, we consistently get its pain. Like, dude, there's scenes where, like, you see him walking, and there's just steam coming out. Or, like, he's walking through the water, and then the water's just, like, melting around him. It's so fucking cool. But we get that moment of grief and anger. And it is the military that kind of ultimately kills Destroyah. Like, Godzilla gets a lot of damage, and like Destroyah flies up, and the military blasts his wings, and he falls, and he never gets up again. And I did kind of like that. Like, you know, throughout this series, number one, in the Heisei era, the military has been on their game. And it's like, as much as they have tried to fight Godzilla, as much as they've seen him as a threat, I like that, in a sense, they kind of say, I wouldn't say they saved him from Destroyah, but it's like they got a big assist. But then we get to the death of Godzilla. As much as I talk about, like, almost every other thing in this movie, I'm like, all right, this is the best thing in the movie. This is the best thing in the movie. This was so cool. Seeing Godzilla melt. Oh, also, there's a scene, like, before this where, you know, he does start overheating, like, the radiation is coming out, and, like, it looks so freaking cool. But he is overheating, and he's about to, like, die. So the government is blasting him, but I believe it's cadmium, which is freezing him and lowering the temp, I'm assuming enough to maybe, like, ease his pain and his suffering. At least somewhat, but also to kind of contain it so that way when he overheats, the world doesn't die. And that succeeds, and what you get is this frozen Godzilla that just starts slowly melting and dissolving. And it's a really cool visual. And I say this as someone who has really enjoyed watching these movies. Like, some of them are not good, like, at all. And some of them aren't great movies, but I don't care because I'm enjoying watching a Godzilla movie. But it's kind of one of the few times, I would say, I felt, like, real, genuine emotion. Because I was, like, starting to tear up a bit. I was like, I did not think I would actually cry watching Godzilla die. But I kind of did. I just want to see, do I have any other notes I really want to bring up? Oh yeah, there is this one point where, like, so Emiko Yamane, was that her name? Yeah, she is the protagonist from the first movie. She is, like, a kind of a bit of a recurring character in this, because they talk to her about using Serizawa's oxygen destroyer, and she's like, no, like, we can't do that. Understandable. But there's, I believe it was like a couple of kids that she had raised who are two of your main characters in this movie. One is a researcher, one is a reporter, because it's a Godzilla movie. You're either going to be a researcher, you're going to be a reporter, or you're going to be a government official. Soldier is part of the military. Like, I would kind of count that under government official, but if you want to make that separate distinctions, I think that's also acceptable. You're a researcher, reporter, military, or you work for the government. There's almost no in between. So you get one of each here. And one of them is offered to join G-Force, which every time we hear that, like, I do just think of the movie with the guinea pigs, so it does make me laugh. But he's offered to join G-Force, and he turns it down, and then he learns that Miki works there, and he's like, oh no, I want to meet her, I'm in. And that kind of made me laugh. I thought that was fun. There's a bit where they shout out Okinawa as, like, Godzilla's moving past it. I'm like, anytime Okinawa shows up, you get extra points. I don't think this movie's gonna need those extra points, but here we go. Oh yeah, there was a point when, I think it's when you see Destroyah's second form, like when he's the giant crab. I thought of The Mummy Returns and the CGI version of The Rock, and was just kind of imagining that face photoshopped onto that monster, and I started laughing. I thought that was really fun. But yeah, those are essentially all my notes. So, this is easily one of the best Godzilla movies. I say this as someone who's really enjoyed the Heisei era and who really loved Biollante. This is easily my favorite of the Heisei era, so it's in my top 5. The original film and -1 are, like, kind of locked in, and I think Shin Godzilla is also locked in, which means for a top 5, I have to lose either Hedorah or Biollante, and I went back and forth on this one, and I still kind of am. And really what it comes down to is Biollante, to me, is like the platonic ideal of a Godzilla movie. It has everything I would want and expect from a good Godzilla movie. Hedorah is just weird. And it's in the best possible way. Like, I just really like that this movie said, I'm going to make my own Godzilla movie, and I'm going to do it the way I want. I wouldn't say it's quite like the way, like, House is, where it's like, it's not that same level of sheer insanity, but almost kind of. And it's something I really like and appreciate. And what it ultimately comes down to for me is I can easily identify what my favorite scene is from each film. And Biollante, I've talked about it, it's that scene where after the first fight, and she, turns to that field of flowers, and Godzilla sees that field of flowers, and it kind of starts to he starts to realize what he's done and what he's responsible for here. And there's this genuine sense of regret. And in Hedorah, it's after several fights and seeming attempts from Godzilla to try to reason with the monster and be like, hey, dude, we don't have to do this. Like, his character development from, like, conversations with Mothra and, like, fighting Ghidorah are trying to lead him to do the same thing, and it keeps not working. And as Hedorah tries to escape, Godzilla, thoroughly done with this monster's shit, uses his atomic breath by firing it at the ground and flying to catch up to Hedorah so he can absolutely destroy this thing. he's like one of my favorite atomic brats. Like, that's got to be in the top 5. And when I look at those two scenes, one of them is a really good emotional moment, and I love the characterization of Godzilla. And the other also kind of is, because it does show just the frustration of, like, I am trying, and I've tried really hard, but I'm done. I am done giving you these chances. And what it really comes down to, one of those scenes is actually in the film. The other is a deleted scene. So I think, and there's a part of me that's like, I still want to say Biolante's in my top 5, but I'm also like, so is Hetera. They're almost kind of tied, but if I have to pick one at this moment, I think I am still gonna stick with Hetera very, very closely over Biolante. But original film, -1, Destroyah, Shin Godzilla, Ruby Gillman Teenage Dragon, best Godzilla movies. So that was that one. At some point, we'll finish and talk about 98.